The roots of Semmelweis really began in 2007 when I first learned of the story and got excited about it and started working on some song ideas, workshops, and scene ideas with my friend Matthew Doherty, who was a friend from college. It led eventually in 2018 to the premiere production in Hungary, and it wasn't long after that that Max and I started thinking about the idea of turning the music into an album. Max and I were interested in going beyond the constraints that are imposed by the medium of theater and really embracing the world of the studio. And this gave us just a vastly expanded orchestra. And the album is really a blend of acoustically recorded instruments and electronic elements. And in spite of the fact that the album has this gigantic choral sound to it, we made the decision to use one single singer to represent that entire chorus. So there's only two singers on the album, Charlotte, who is overdubbed upon herself to be all of the female chorus, and then myself on 5 of the songs.
I first started working with Ray with his band, Meaghan Burke. I came on board as they were beginning the process of producing their debut album. They had a couple of songs already recorded and some that were kind of partially produced. And so I was part of that, recording and producing and then mixing the album. That's kind of how I got started with Ray. And then throughout the whole Meaghan Burke process, there was kind of this Semmelweis undercurrent with various performances happening here and there, and I would kind of jump on for helping with like some Sibelius arrangements and notations and stuff. And then one thing led to another. One of the performances, we decided to put together some recordings of the songs, and then that just kind of steamrolled into the whole album.
For Best Idea, Ray just wasn't 100% satisfied with the way that the demo had come across. We were actually considering cutting the track, but he brought it to me to lend my ear and my production skills to it, and we were inspired by the composers David Lang and Steve Reich, who work with this sort of evolving loop-based composition technique, and we decided to employ that using female voices. So these hocketed phrases, these puffs of vocals, became sort of the centerpiece of that track. And I would say that's my primary contribution to it. We built that track from the ground up, me and Ray.
When we set about planning the recording sessions, you had this idea for how you wanted to record Charlotte that to me seemed very elaborate, but you really, for you, it was really important.
The decision to record Charlotte, each part standing in a different place in the room, was really informed by the desire to capture a choir and create a choir. If you imagine recording a choir, each individual member is standing in a different place in the room, and that creates different interactions with the space and creates immersion and realness and depth. The traditional way of overdubbing a single vocalist on a choir would be to record them on one microphone up close and then do a lot of post-processing to mimic those interactions with the space. You pan it around and different reverbs and levels and that sort of thing. But the way we did it, I believe, creates a more human and a more realistic presentation. And actually it proved to be helpful in the Atmos, having her in this space recorded individually. It made it much easier to spread it out around the room, but keep that real aspect of a vocalist in a space with unique interactions in that space. The Atmos mix came into play at the suggestion of the album's mastering engineer, Daniel Shores. We had the stereo mixes done, we sent them off, and upon his first listen, the first email we got back from him was, have you considered doing an Atmos mix? And it was kind of like a light bulb moment because it just seemed so obvious when he said it. It was like, yeah, the way we recorded it, the spacious and ambient nature of a lot of the music, it was very conducive to that environment. And when he said it, it instantly, like a flood of ideas of like, oh yeah, we can, put this over there. And, it all just like made sense. And so it was because of him that we did that.
On the streets of Vienna, you were a living city. On this table, antiquity. I come down off the street where the lamps are lit and the sweepers sweep. This day for you could be 1,000 years. Your ruined city waits for the careful turning of a spade. Wipe the ash from your skin and down into the ground. Give this mystery to me. Archaeology, I dig down and down, down and down. And in a ruined tomb, I find my own self lying there. My own self lying there. A careful spade still turning in my hands. Still turning in my hand. A careful spade still turning in my hand.
Sorry, I have to just go into airplane mode. This is going to be going forever. It is literally Ted Andrews.
No way.
It's literally. Hey, Ted? Can I call you back? I'm in the middle of talking about you on an interview camera. I'll call you back a little later on this afternoon. Okay. Okay, all right. Bye-bye. Ted Andrews was the executive producer of, the biggest New York showing that we had. As with any theater project, there are it's mostly moments of discouragement, it seems. It's really all about pushing through discouragements. This project was set aside and abandoned many times, sometimes for years at a time. But thinking back through some of those little things that sort of bring it back and get you interested in working on it again, from small workshops and things. Well, the big one that came along for us was that my friend Ted pointed out to me that Ignaz Semmelweis is going to have a 200th birthday anniversary in 2018. And he's like, you have to do something with this. And I said, Ted, I've been beating this dead horse for years. Why is that going to change now just because there's an anniversary? Does anybody even care? And Ted said to me, you have no idea. This man is a national hero in Hungary. He is a household name in Hungary. If you haven't, if you're not reaching those people, then you're not, you're not doing the right thing. So the idea was, he said, it's because you're going to the wrong people. You have to aim for the right people to hear about this, and we're going to do that. And so Ted grabbed me and pushed me really hard to self-produce a showing of the entire work that we had up to that point. And he said, you're gonna self-produce it. You're gonna do it all. I'm gonna push you hard, and when it happens, I'm going to make sure that the Hungarian Consul General is in the audience. And so he actually did all of that. So we did indeed have a showing, and the Hungarian Consul General was there, who spoke to friends back in Hungary, and that was how we made the connection to the producers on the Hungarian end.
It's never a choice. You see who you see, and soon you belong to the one who dreams.
Ray reached out to me because he had seen me perform something and liked my voice, and asked if I would be interested in singing through some material that he was working on. So I went over to his home studio, and he told me the story of Semmelweis and showed me a couple of his songs. I think we might have even recorded some of them that day, and that's how we started working together. That was about 10 years ago. That's one really cool thing about recording and recording in the 21st century, is how you can be really flexible and really DIY, and later you can incorporate it in more polished settings with a bigger team, and sometimes it just all works together. You have all these different layers of past versions of yourself that can all be combined in this one recording that does become like a fixed creation in time. I think there's something really beautiful about that.
Semmelweis, he's referred to as the savior of mothers, is because he's the one who came up with the idea that by washing hands we can prevent this disease that at that time they called the childbed fever, which is sepsis in a sense, and he was considered hunted outsider during his times, and his friends and family betrayed him, and he had a truly tragic story because the society was in denial about these new ideas, and the male-dominated medical society refused the idea that they themselves are responsible for infecting women and carrying around germs from one spot to another in the clinic. But we didn't want to do a romantic story, but in fact we needed to come up with an idea how to stage the spirits of the dead women, and we ended up having a choir of 16 women who were mostly staged on this enormous LED wall, which also represented an auditorium. Back in the days, they performed autopsy trainings in auditoriums like this, and in the meantime, on the LED walls, we saw the consciousness of Semmelweis and the consciousness of the spirits of the dead women, and we try to imagine a journey through his battle with himself and with his conscience and with the society and with the haunting women.
I think the music in this piece does a really great job of capturing the sort of pathos of the story of Semmelweis, while also having a sort of magical aura to it. The album version, which includes a lot of overdubbing, I feel like is really evocative of ghosts and multiple generations, which is also a theme in the story itself. Yeah, I think the music is really stunning, gorgeous melodies, gorgeous harmonies. It fits my voice really well too.
This album is different, and we conceived of it differently from like a traditional classical album, which most of the time is like a capture recording kind of thing, where you have the ensemble there and you put up your mics and you record it, and that's it. You're preserving the performance, and you're preserving the space and trying to keep it natural. And we didn't necessarily want to do that with this record, which lended itself to the kinds of overdubbing the choir process and recording things here versus at the home studio. We just consciously chose to take it in a much more like produced kind of direction. So there's like delay throws and there's more compression than you would normally have on a classical record. We leaned into those kinds of pop and other production methods with this material that at times is very classical.
And now the Mobius strip version. So you can hear this song backwards, forwards, and upside down. I appreciate your patience.
I first learned of the story of Ignaz Semmelweis by reading about it in the New Yorker, and right away I was really grabbed by how many ways that this story was important. But the central one really is it's a theme of the frustrating lag time between when a visionary person has a very important insight and the time at which that insight is finally accepted by society. And in this case, it was really a situation of urgent life and death. Ignaz Semmelweis had seen what nobody had really noticed. He was working in an obstetrics ward where mothers and children were dying at a really horrific rate, and nobody had an explanation for it. But he suspected that it had something to do with doctors not washing their hands. It didn't make sense to anybody at the time, but there was no real mechanism to explain it because there was no germ theory of disease yet. So he had to go on watching mothers and infants dying, and when he really felt like he had the answer, and it was such a simple answer, wash your hands, he couldn't compel his doctors to accept that. And you can sort of imagine why. The news that you've been inadvertently killing your patients for years and years must be a really hard thing to swallow. So denial is very powerful, and it would cause people really to shut down to the information he had to say.
In a stranger's voice I heard, spoken in no tongue I know, these murmurs from across the sea that still somehow were made by me. In clear but broken semblances, intact as separate languages, my mind to coach on two roads at once, riding over cobbled cobblestone and mountain.